Well, let's talk about logic. Remember, we were fighting about logic yesterday.
Oh yeah.
And
Yep.
as
Yep.
much as
Yep.
I hate to say it, I think you were right, Chris. I hate that.
Uh, I'll refrain from commenting.
Exactly. And you know that here was the problem. Here's the problem. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Hands On Logos podcast. This is where we discuss current events, personal growth, and any other random topic that crosses our minds. Our goal is to have a meaningful discussion that help us to see the topics we discuss more clearly. Our hope is we can help you expand your self-awareness, develop your critical thinking, and learn to be less reactive to the world around you. And most importantly, remember, be curious. If you like what you hear, like this video and subscribe to the channel. If you have any feedback, please leave a comment. We want to hear what you think. We appreciate you. Chris, there it is, another Friday.
Another Friday, another podcast.
And this is podcast number 25.
25.
Wow.
That's it's impressive, I think, you know.
That is impressive. That's crazy.
When we started, I wasn't sure how far we'd actually get into this, so.
Yeah. Well, so let's talk about some stuff today, Chris.
Okay. What stuff shall we start with?
Well, let's talk about logic. Remember, we were fighting about logic yesterday.
Oh yeah.
And as much as I hate to say it, I think you were right, Chris. I hate that.
I'll refrain from commenting.
Exactly. And you know that here was the problem. Here's the problem. You were absolutely right. I think, as usual, we have sort of a definition thing. And when we say logic, logic's complicated. There's all different kinds of logic. There's logic for computer science, for philosophy. I mean, so even we were both probably need to be a little more precise, but I think we need to decide when's important to be precise and when it's not. Because sometimes if you're trying to just push a cow across the road, I don't know where that came from, that example.
All right.
You know, exactly where you push the cow and exactly how hard you push it to an ounce is probably not that important. Just like push on his ass and get him across the road, right? Because we don't need precision logic. However, maybe you could come up with a better example. Have you ever trying to do?
Let's say you're trying to tip the cow because he's sleeping. You can't just push him anywhere at that point.
Yeah, you need to be a little more precise. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So
it doesn't have to be exact, but you're not going to be pushing below his center of gravity because you wouldn't be able to tip him over.
yeah, I wouldn't suggest go pushing him on his foot, right? That probably wouldn't work as well.
I'm just going with the cow theme here, so.
And so one of the things that I think another thing that we miss quite frequently is in our constraints. I think we don't add enough constraints in. I think a lot of the constraints in my mind are implied and they're not actually stated. But I think that gets us in trouble sometimes.
Well, I also think that anything that puts a box around our thinking is a constraint, but they're not all the same type of constraint, if that makes sense. So
yeah, I suppose, yeah, sure.
The goals of a project usually help you define the constraints along the way, but there might be other constraints that are environmental that need to be created from the start. In essence, regardless of what your goals of your project are, you've got environmental constraints that exist, right? Yeah. So I think part of it is it's definitional. It's where we're applying constraints. I also think, to an extent, that you and I approach problem solving differently, even though we're both applying logic.
Yeah, it's interesting. So let me just talk about like a definition of logic. And this is sort of the classic definition of logic. But even this is ripe with problems. I started thinking about it, right? So let's say the generic one is like, let's say if A equals B and B equals C, therefore logic says A equals C. But even that can be broken based upon how you define and what you define A, B, and C as, depending on how precise you get.
But what you
So,
define it as, or what it is that you're saying is the comparison?
not the comparison. Let's say A equals B, right? So I think
Okay.
it's important to state that A is a variable, it holds something, and
Mm-hmm.
B is a variable and it holds something.
Okay.
So let's say, for instance, if you define these without enough precision, you could say that A is a cat and B is my specific cat, Dudley, which is a cat. So you could say A equals B. And I'm like, okay, I mean, a cat is Dudley. Dudley's a cat. Okay, I think that makes sense. Now, what you define, and you could say that now C equals Dexter, which is another cat, right? But now your logic breaks if you say that A equals C
Mm-hmm.
because or B equals C because now you're saying Dudley's equal to Dexter. And you're like, no, 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 no. If you define it as cats, that's fine. But if you want to be more precise and indicate a specific cat, now that breaks down. And so with this example, this is now where I believe critical thinking comes into play. It's sort of like a higher level than this lower level logic that can sort of detect, well, we didn't define it right, or as you called it last time, that fact is not exactly precise, or those facts are not equivalent. I mean, like here they are. If you have, a mile wide gap, yeah, a cat's kind of a cat, right?
So,
But
so the
if you,
logic, I think the logic saying that Dudley is Dexter, right? Dudley's a cat, cat is Dexter, Dudley is Dexter. I think your logic is actually accurate, but the problem is the inputs that you're applying your logic to are flawed.
yeah, right. Yeah, you're
Right.
you're you're defining things differently. You're changing definitions on things. And one you're calling one variable is this thing called cat, or it represents a group of felines that kind of look and behave somewhat similar. And then you're starting to say, now I'm going to take one particular one, and he's a cat, and therefore another's a cat. Now you're making those two cats the same. That's not true. And so we need to expand and use critical thinking to catch that error.
Yeah. So I would say logic is a part of critical thinking. And
Yes, right.
what we were discussing was I was focused on last week when we talked. I was focused on just the piece of logic. You were focused on the critical thinking, which was the layer above that, which is
Yeah,
other
you were
things.
basically, yeah, you're saying the logic is right, the facts were wrong,
Hmm.
and then just using just pure logic, yeah, that's true. You could appear to get to the right answer. But so in that case, what that really means is logic, you need more than just logic. You need critical thinking
Yeah.
on
And
top
I
of
think
logic.
that's where a lot of the fault in people's opinions come from is they're applying logic to the wrong data set, the wrong facts, the wrong, some subset of information that doesn't provide enough to make a holistic opinion out of it. And so you
Yeah,
end up with someone who says, yeah, and then that's where the biases come in. I've got a bias that it's this, so you only see the facts that fit the logic of that get to that bias,
yeah, right.
that feed that outcome. I guess is
Yeah, that's exactly
right.
right. It's
And so
interesting.
what we're saying then is that I think where I was coming from was at a more fundamental level is going to someone and saying they're wrong when when in their mind their logic is perfectly good is a tough sell to do because you need to find out, are they being illogical or are they being logical and just don't understand that they're missing out on key pieces of information that would change their
Yeah,
outcome.
well, it's a key piece of information, and there could be other problems too. I mean, those are not the only
Hmm.
two things that could be going wrong. There could be all sorts of other things. So I watched a little bit of news today, not today, this
Uh-oh.
week, just a little bit, just a little
Uh-oh.
bit, and I would like to talk about one concept which I thought was very interesting. And my first thought is these people are idiots, but then maybe they're not idiots. So I just wanted to talk. Maybe we could define if they're idiots or not. And so we're talking about Starbucks baristas. So apparently, just in the 2 minutes that I watched on the news, apparently Starbucks decided that they wanted to apply some sort of a dress code to their baristas. And the baristas, or at least some of them, did not like this. It was a big problem, actually. And I was watching, and then, oh, this is what's happening, Chris. This is what happened. This was my hair. So there's this little tiny, like it's a greasy spoon diner, right? And in honor of your speech, you gave a speech today in Toastmasters. Toastmasters every Friday, and apparently this is something National Barbecue Day. Is
Yep.
that a true fact?
Yep.
So
National
in
Barbecue
honor
Day.
of this true fact that today is barbecue, I went to D's, and they're starting to serve barbecue now, which is so interesting. So that I'm going to get a little bit of barbecue in honor of National Barbecue Day. And of
Okay.
course, we're in Arkansas. So typically, if you go into any sort of place in Arkansas, it's very Republican. So Fox News is always on there, right? So
All right.
I thought, I'm just kind of setting the scenario.
All
And so I
righty.
thought, you know what? Let me just set where I can watch Fox News. Because normally what I do is I study my Greek or I write down stuff or do whatever. But I didn't have a piece of paper or a pen or anything. So I said, let me just watch Fox News. And this story came on. And that was so fascinating to see how bent out of shape they were about wearing a dress code. And so one barista said, this is not about dress code. This is about trying to control us. So it's interesting how you can come with like everybody's got to wear apparently some sort of black shirt and jeans to equals that's controlling. And it's preventing me from expressing myself properly. And so apparently there's like going to be some sort of class action lawsuit potentially, and there's going to be there,
There's
and
so
I
many
think
other layers of stuff that are going on in my head. I could argue any side you want on this. Which side do you want me to argue?
well, um, I don't know which side I want you to argue. I just want to keep talking about it a little bit.
Okay.
And so these people were really bent out of shape because everybody's controlling them and they can't express themselves. And so thought, my first thought on that is like, seriously? I mean, this is like the best thing you have to bitch about. And so what I would like you to argue is why I'm wrong, why this is more important than I'm making it out to be. Like these are a bunch of 3-year-old children just throwing a temper tantrum.
So you want me to steelman their viewpoint?
I don't know. First of all, you got to define steelman, but I think I want you to argue why I'm wrong believing that. Well,
Okay,
I mean,
well, so let's first talk about steelman. So there's strawman and steelman.
yeah,
And when you strawman someone's argument, you purposely state it in a way that you can attack it easily.
yeah,
When
sure.
you steelman their argument, you do the best job to defend their side so that it's much harder to take apart. You try to see you try to actually defend it in a way that it will hold up.
Okay, fine. If you want to steelman, that's fine. So basically, you're going to be arguing in their favor.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah,
And then so can you clarify what aspect of your thinking? Just summarize your thinking on this topic so I can
so I
figure
would
out what.
like you to break my thought process that these are a bunch of 3-year-old children throwing a temper tantrum. And my initial thought was, look, if you don't like it, go start your own coffee house. You can dress however you want. So
Yeah, so there's
it's just
multiple
basically,
layers here we can address it on, but I have to in order to defend, I'm going to have to hit it at certain points, right? My values have to be a certain way to be able to defend this thinking. So
yeah,
I think if I'm going to defend this, I have to think I'm working for this company.
yeah,
This company, a barista is a creative person, and creativity requires the ability to express. And the idea that we need to wear a uniform, we already have the apron. The apron is the uniform. The idea that I have to wear a uniform beyond that is actually dampening down my ability of self-expression. And if you
gotcha.
want to argue that yes, I'm working for you, and yes, you can technically set the rules, the wellness of the employees is something that needs to be considered. And the type of person that has this job, particularly one in a long-term role, actually needs the ability to have some form of expression. You think about it, we have barista competitions where the artwork on your foam is something that you develop, the ability to express it in that manner. So a big part of the way several people express themselves is through how they come across. They could be through makeup, through hairstyle, it could be through clothing. So if you wanted to have some general rule, and I'm going based off what you said about black shirt and jeans. If they wanted to have some general rule saying you can't be nude, you can't have anything overtly sexual, and I don't know if that's included or not, but I could see some rules, about propriety being part of it. But if you're going to dictate what you have to wear versus what, a couple of things you can't wear, it's a different level of control. And it is about control because they don't want us to unionize. They don't want us to be able to have our own power base, because that would in fact impact the bottom line profit of the organization. And right now, all they care about is profits and shareholders, and not about their employees. They need to give something to the employees to show that they actually care about the people who work for them, who actually make it possible for them to make money.
I got you. Okay, so let me kind of come back to that a little bit. And the only logical thing I can come back is insult. I'm like, seriously, dude, you're pouring freaking hot coffee in a cup. Let's not get crazy about being too creative, right? I mean, I suppose if that's the limit of your creative, get a life. Seriously, go do something that actually really matters.
Why am I defined by what you think is creative and what is not, and what you don't think is creative? Your judgment of my social economic status and the fact that I pour coffee, what does it have to do with anything? You're saying I'm worthless and I can't express myself because I don't make as much money as you? Get real. This is America, man.
I'm not saying that. I'm not saying you're worthless.
Okay, now that was a straw man attack on your comment. So
yeah, no, I got you. That's good. What I'm saying is that you're a child throwing a tantrum like a 3-year-old. That's my problem.
Well, I can take that a couple of ways. Children are more true to and see the truth more often than people want them to believe. And, being under control is one of the things that as an American, we don't want to be under control. We don't want to be under the control of the government. We don't want to be under control of the companies and corporate greed and all the other aspects that seem to be stamping out our ability to express ourselves. But even if so, I take umbrage at the fact that you think the ability for me to give my opinion in opposition to a company policy is in fact what a 3-year-old does. That's what a full-blown American citizen or any citizen of any country should have the right to do when inappropriate rules come down upon them.
Inappropriate rules come down upon them.
Americans protest when there are laws that occur that they don't like. When things change, look at the protests when the abortion law was overturned, right? Let's face it. Freedom of expression in work is just an extension of the First Amendment.
You have a point there. Not a good point, but there is a point there.
This is where the problem is nothing's black and white, right? Everything will be on a spectrum somewhere. So I can always find a way to tie something to a good point. The question is, in the overall picture, what do we think, right?
Yeah, it's interesting. So my thought is I still come back to the 3-year-old thing. If this is me telling you that you have to wear a certain shirt in my business and I pay you money to do there, you have to give up certain rights in exchange for me paying you. So I guess my problem is the childness, the immaturity of throwing the temper tantrum. Because it was interesting, because on Fox News, what I saw was there was several baristas, they were running around doing like a dance, doing this, just basically doing, in my opinion, what would be really silly stuff about something that's not really that important. So, but if you do want to express yourself, I think that's awesome. Go express it in your own coffee company.
This has nothing to do with coffee companies. This has to do with individuality. My rights as an individual person. You're saying I have to conform and be part of the identity politics of an organization? That doesn't make any sense. You want me to saying, I identify as a Starbucks employee and therefore I have to dress like this. No, I identify as me and I work for Starbucks. That's a totally different thing.
Well, if you want to get paid, yeah, you have to do that, right? That's the
So now we're
extreme.
talking about a version of modern slavery, right? I have to give up rights to get paid, right? It's like I have to give up my freedom in order to be able to live, is what you're saying, right?
Yes, correct.
So in other words, you're for slavery. You just want modern slavery is what you want.
It's still not slavery because it's still a choice. Because at any point, one of those people could just quit Starbucks and go somewhere else and get another job. There's nobody that's forcing them to stay there. In slavery, you don't have the choice to leave.
Is that truly what slavery is? The way we've defined slavery, and it's changed over the years. Slavery is not just strictly what it was in the days of the 1800s, where people owned a slave and could kill them and beat them and do whatever they want to them, right? Now slavery can be economic slavery. Now we can have political slavery. We can have all types of slavery that have nothing necessarily to do with the rights of that people didn't have, 200 years ago.
Well, you brought up the word slavery.
Oh yeah.
So
I'm saying this is a form of slavery, and you're saying it's not. So we've got a definitional problem here.
Yeah, that was my question.
You're using an 1860s definition of slavery. I'm using a 2025 definition of slavery.
So I would like you to define what slavery means then.
Slavery is any time an overpowering or overarching organization forces you to act in a certain way against what you want, against your freedoms, against your rights.
Oh, that's fascinating. So by your definition, if I hire you as an employee and I say, Chris, I need you to show up at 9 a.m. and you go home at 5 p.m., that's slavery to you? And in exchange for that, I'm going to provide you some sort of a check every week. So that's a definition of slavery?
Those are the rules you started with when you hire me. That's a different thing. If you impose a rule on me in the middle of me working for you, basically you're just saying that I have authority over you and I can just do whatever the hell I want. That's slavery.
Oh, so that's the problem. So if it's pre-negotiated beforehand, that's not a problem.
If you go into a relationship understanding what the rules are and you agree to it, that's one thing. But if you go in here and tell me that after I've started working for you and we've been working together in good faith for however much period of time, and then you tell me that I can't do it anymore, or that you're changing the rules in such a way that it impedes on my freedoms, yeah, that's wrong. That's slavery.
Now that's slavery. And so the fact that I can leave at any point in time still makes it slavery.
Yeah. Slaves could have left at any point in time. They would have been beaten and killed, but they could have left at any point in time. Consequences, you're talking about consequences, right? Technically, any slave could have walked away from their master back in the 250 years ago. They just would have died and been beaten to death in the process or tortured.
Well, those are definitely consequences.
Yeah, so the consequence, so the point is, yeah, I can walk away from a job. You're right, I can walk away. Different consequences. That doesn't mean it's not slavery. The idea of slavery is not about the consequences. The idea of slavery is about freedom.
I see. So then if we make an agreement and the agreement gets updated and changed, that means then
it wasn't updated. You imposed a change. It was not updated in agreement. You made an agreement and then you imposed a change on that agreement that I didn't agree to.
Oh, that's okay. That kind of makes sense. So in that particular case, then, let's say we agreed to a certain hourly wage, and then you ask for more money. Mm-hmm. Now you're putting me in a position of slavery at that point. Now I'm the slave.
I can't impose you paying me more money. You can impose a rule on me. There's a distinction there. I don't have the power to make you pay me more money. You have the power to force me to do something. That's slavery.
And even if you just walk away, that's still power then that I have over you.
Walking away to get out of the situation, you always have the power to walk away, even if it results in death. Yes.
Okay, but you still call that slavery then?
Sure.
Okay, and then collective bargaining or wanting to form a union at Starbucks, is that an act of tyranny and slavery against Starbucks then? Because now you're changing the rules midstream?
Collective bargaining as a result of creating a union, you're saying, does the existence of a union coming and saying demanding more money versus a person demanding more money, Is that what
Yeah.
you're asking?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Does the union have the power to force payment? At the end of the day, can they force payment?
Well, here's the thing, but you're arguing one side in one set of logic and the other side with a different set of logic.
No, I'm pointing out a different aspect. I'm going back to the idea of authority and power. So while
Can
collective bargaining means you have a larger group of people and therefore more influence, you still don't have the power to force the corporation to do anything. They have the power.
they have all the power? That's what you're
They
saying.
have all the power. Therefore, when they impose something without an agreement, they are then basically resorting to a slave tactic.
I kind of agree with you actually on this whole thing. That's why, in my opinion, being an employee is a really bad idea.
So okay, now let's break from this for a moment. So when you think about this, if they were making that argument, they might be able to get some traction. But no one's thought through this because the baristas are somehow trying to spin this story as an outright, they're quashing our rights aspect, but they are not tying it to anything logically to defend it. Right? At the
Wait,
end
are
of the
you
day, I don't agree with the argument I just made. Right? I don't agree that they have the right to demand the ability to wear whatever they want.
well,
I
you
think
just
they
said
can.
it, right? You said it was
I
otherwise.
just said it because I was steel manning the argument to the best of my ability.
I
And given
see.
the little amount of time I put into it, that was my steel man argument.
I
If I
see.
were to attack that argument, I would say, understood, but at the end of the day, the corporation has a responsibility to itself, to all the employees, not just a small group, including the back office employees, including the people back at corporate, and to the stakeholders, the people who actually buy the stocks, who have an expectation of certain things. And if
Mhm.
we've made the decision that there's a risk associated here with allowing people to dress however they want, and it's a risk of getting sued, it's a risk of this, and they need to articulate all of this. It's a risk judgment that we're making that this has to happen. And so while we're sad that it keeps people from being able to express themselves, it is something we need to do to build brand reputation, to minimize risk, and to improve our sales.
Wow. So then, okay, I kind of somewhat agree with that. But going back to your argument, they don't like that, so they're gonna like throw a temper tantrum like a 3-year-old, basically.
Correct. Now, and so now I would frame what they're doing, back to your idea, as a temper tantrum, because they don't want to look at the big picture. They're selfish. I would say actually focus as you're self-centered on what you're doing, and you're not part of the team. You're not part of the organization. You're not looking at the big picture that needs to happen to be so that all boats rise with the tide, or whatever term you want to use, right? That's the argument I make, is collectively we have responsibilities beyond just you. And as
So
such,
then,
we need to make decisions that way.
so then, are you saying then that all baristas are 3-year-old throwing temper tantrums?
I would say
Children.
the ones who are making an issue of this are only self-centered. And just like a child who only thinks about themselves, they haven't learned how to see the bigger picture, how it's good for not just the corporation, but for their fellow coworkers, for the ones in the back office. They haven't looked at the fact that the people who buy stocks, yes, it's sad that we have to make decisions because they want to make more money, but they empower us to keep existing as a corporation. They empower us to be able to pay you a salary, right? We need to spin what they're thinking about. You're being selfish. You need to be more selfless in your thought. Giving up your right to wear, I don't know, pink Crocs at work. I don't know what they want to do, in order for us all to have a better life, is in fact the noble thing to do and the right thing to do, and you are in the wrong.
That is so fascinating. So then, that's a really interesting way of putting it. Yes. Yes, yes, yes.
And
That
it's all
makes sense.
about spin, right? I mean, so as soon as you were mentioning this, my first thought was, who got pissed off enough to make a deal about this? And then how did they spin it to their fellow employees? Oh, they're just trying to control us. They don't care about blah blah blah. They're greedy. I'm sure these are the types of things that came across in the messaging to the fellow employees, right? Because one thing I didn't hear you mention, and maybe it wasn't in the story, was why are they making this change? Why do they want to
Yeah, I don't know.
enforce it?
I didn't say. I only watched it for about 10 minutes. I'm sure it was in there
Yeah.
somewhere, but I didn't
So
see it.
I mean, how they without knowing what the argument is, I've got to then go through my mind and think, why would a corporation make this decision? They're not just going to willy-nilly do it because they want to control people, because it costs money to change a policy. It costs money and effort to change anything in a massive organization. So they're willing to spend money on it. There's a reason why they're willing to spend money on it, right? And if it's really about control, I'd be like, okay, if it's about control, then we should see other aspects of them trying to gain control over people, right?
Yeah.
But what I think is it's a most companies that make decisions, there is a logic behind them. The logic can be flawed, just like we talked about. If they're looking at the wrong data, it can be flawed. But the logic is there. We need to have a dress code policy because, and the first thought I have is risk. Someone's wearing unsafe clothing. Risk. Someone's wearing skimpy clothing and it offends some clients and customers. Mm-hmm. All kinds of aspects like that. Reputation. We want to have a standardized look beyond just the apron, so that people have can look at us and understand that that's part of our brand, right? Yeah. There's all kinds of aspects I could come with as to why they want to make this change that make logical sense, without going straight to they want to control us, which would be probably about 100th on my list of ideas on why they would make this change.
So this is very interesting. And so I tend to follow this pattern as well, too, when I'm trying to avoid doing this. This is basically victimhood. This is, you don't like a scenario and you're going to blame somebody else instead of taking responsibility and trying to fix it.
I don't like it. You want to do something bad to me.
Something that I don't like or I don't agree with. Right? I mean, I would define that as bad, right? Because I don't like it.
And if you think about it, so that idea, don't attribute to malice what can be attributed to incompetence. It's actually a much broader thing like that. Don't attribute to malice something that has a much more logical reason. It doesn't have to be incompetence. It could be anything, right? And I think you need to assume that there is logic somewhere in their side of this conversation, and to assume bad intent on the other side is bad logic on your part, or is bad reasoning on your part. I know I don't want to get into the argument. It's bad reasoning on your part to assume.
Because that's a more generalized approach. Yeah, that's really interesting. So then one of the things I'd like to do, this just kind of came up, you just inspired me to do this, is maybe one of our principles or one of our rules or one of our somethings of this show, Chris, I'm going to write this down right now. Hang on. Is a concept is don't be a victim.
I don't like that, but I think it might be good as a tool.
And we can wordsmith it. We can do all sorts of stuff.
Conceptually, it never would occur to me to be a victim. That's why I don't like it. But I think for others who may default to me first, you see something as it impacts me, and because I don't think that way naturally, but other people might. So maybe it makes sense to say it that way.
I think it's super common, actually, because there's a lot that you get from being a victim,
Oh, the power of victimhood I get. The logic of victimhood I don't. So
the problem with being a victim, though, is that I think there's two errors in thinking. The two errors in thinking is I believe that they feel like they don't have any other options. When my hunch is you probably have a bunch of options on the table you're not even aware of.
Just like you said, you can always walk away. There's consequences, but you can always walk away.
There's consequences. You can always walk away, right? It's interesting because if you had the right people walk away that knew how to start a business, that knew a lot of stuff, that knew how to get funding, that knew how to market and sell, they could start a competing coffee company based on that one event, and they could crush Starbucks in 10 years.
Not only that, they've got a story as their origin story.
They've got a beautiful...
The big corporation was trying to control us, and we decided, no, we won't stand for that, and we started our own competing company, and we crushed them.
And we crushed them, actually.
I mean, that's a story right there. It sells itself. But
and by the way, we make better coffee than those guys did anyways.
Well, yeah. Well, everyone makes better coffee. But I guess the real question, though, would be, why don't the people who have those skills feel the same way about the corporate policy. And this is where we're going to tread on some areas where I think people don't want to talk about this. But generally, the people who probably are upset about this are your lower paid employees. They are the ones who are doing more of the cog work, right? They're a cog in the system. Whereas the people you're talking about that have the skills to start a company, they're higher up in the company to begin with because they're having more skills that the company values. And because of that, they're not in the same boat when it comes to corporate policy impacting them. They probably do have they probably started with a corporate dress policy that back at the office. They weren't allowed to get to just wear whatever they want, and so it never even occurred to them that was a problem.
Yeah, which is really fascinating. So then that individual that wants to express themselves, they have limited capabilities. They have limited power. They have limited tools because which is another concept that I want to talk about too, Chris, is I believe that when you find yourself, I'm going to write this down. Hang on a second. Getting emotional or angry, that's the last step. You've run out of tools, you've run out of options. So that's the only thing left to do. And I think that's one of our ethoses here is the fact that avoid getting so emotional, start to think a little bit more instead of just letting your emotions overrun you, right?
I think because the feeling is dictating your thinking, you automatically go to this is all I can do. Whereas really, if you didn't let your emotions dictate your thinking, you could start thinking about really what else is out there. Because I think everyone always has options. You know, some of them, sometimes they're all bad. I won't say you always have a good option, but
Yeah, right.
you always have options and you always have the power to choose amongst your options. But if your feelings are such that you feel like a victim and therefore you're playing on that victimhood, then the only thing you could do is respond like a victim.
Yeah. And this is why victimhood is so dangerous.
It's so powerful, though. I mean, this is one of the problems I used to have with, oh gosh, what's his name? Jesse Jackson and the other guy who I actually like him a lot more now. But the idea was you are victims, and yeah, so support me and I will help get you something because you're victims, as opposed to you are. Yeah, it goes. You are victims of a system that yeah. It's one thing to say you are victims and you have no control. You are victims. Now let's do something about it. That's two different
Yeah.
messages. So
But
you're
you do
victims, so
know,
you don't have any control, and you don't have any control. So now the government owes you. The other people owe you. I'm gonna go make that happen for you. Give me support. Versus you're the victims of a screwed up system. We need to change it. Give me your support and let's go change it. Is a totally different message.
totally different thing. It's interesting bringing up Jesse Jackson because that guy is a total thief. I mean, he is a
Oh,
horrible
Sharpton is the other
person.
guy, right? Sharpton, I used to have a lower viewpoint of him than Jackson, and over the years, you know, he still is does a lot of what he did before, but he's much better at it in my mind than he used to
But
be.
I'm not even going to make names. Which one is the guy, the preacher, the guy, the pastor? Was that the guy?
Jesse
No,
Jackson and he was the one who he fathered several, I think, kids out of wedlock and had
and he's
affairs and
lost
the
a lot of
like.
weight and everything, right?
No, that's Sharpton.
Oh, Sharpton. Okay, Sharpton. He's the
Yeah,
thief, actually. And I have a
he's the
very
one who defended the woman who got shot in her car.
okay, yeah,
She was
yeah, because
sleeping
he
in her car and
basically
she got shot. Yeah.
shakes companies down, right? He just uses this victim thing.
Yeah, but yes, yet I think the feeling I have, and someone else may point out facts that I'm unaware of. My feeling is that Jesse Jackson did it more. He's the one who got the Toyota in Japan to hire a colored person on their, a black person on their board
Yeah,
because they didn't have representation. And I'm like, yes, in Japan, it's like 99% Japanese ethnically. So
yeah.
that their board was made up of, had he made the argument of gender, that would have been a much better argument to make in Japan because it was heavily in the male sub. But instead, he waited on race and he got them to hire someone. And I'm like, I don't get that at all.
It's so interesting because I think particular somebody like him is a total thief. I think he's an evil person, actually. and I believe there's a special place in hell for him. Because I will tell you why, right? So I was at a training class, and I was talking to a special forces guy, and I can't remember what country he was in. He was down in some third world country, and he saw that dude there. And basically, what he was doing is he was buying up mineral rights from natives to extort them. And so typically, this is the problem with those people. Typically, what I see with those people is they're more evil than the organization that they're trying to go after, as a general rule. Now, I'm not, I'm just spewing out nonsense based on a little bit of data, and I could be totally wrong, but that's just kind of where my head goes. So I typically don't trust those people.
So
They're dangerous.
let's follow your logic on this. All right. So so people who represent victims and get political power from them, right? That's what we're talking about, because it was totally different. When Martin Luther King was alive, I feel that it was a little different because he had so much power. He could keep the different groups aligned to actually move towards an overall big picture goal.
Yeah.
When he was killed, I think you had a fragmentation of the civil rights movement, and whoever was left to control in whatever way possible. Some of them kept to the Martin Luther King viewpoint. Other ones went off on their own, right? I think is what ended up happening. So what I would say is I look at someone like Jesse Jackson, who I used to think, oh, great, he's taking on the Martin Luther King mantle. He's moving it on, right? He's moving on. And then he had a whole bunch of scandals. And then I saw some of what he was fighting for, specifically the outcomes. And I said, those don't feel like they're holding to the principle. And it's all about the principle, right? Like if the principle holds through all of the results, then I'm much more inclined to believe that that person's authentic in what they believe.
Yeah, because it's consistent.
If it's just about, I want more power, or I want one side to have more power than they have today, or to grow, then I end up with that is not the same principle that I thought that was being represented here. And so when you see that fact of someone saying that they saw this person in another country buying up mineral rights from people and taking advantage of them, is what you're implying from that. That then is a data point into we're already a little biased from the activity we've seen. So that goes in there and reinforces that bias. And now we have this viewpoint that they're even more bad than we originally thought, right? Would that follow your logic?
Yeah, I think reasonably well. But here's the interesting thing. That dude is not a victim. He is a predator, which is so interesting, right? But he's like, what do they call it? He's like a sheep in wolf's clothing, right? So it's fascinating. It's fascinating.
But was he ever a victim in his life? Did he start off and have and he was a victim? Because a lot of civil rights people, I mean, they grew up in a time frame when they were victims of racism or other aspects.
I mean, right? I don't know, probably so. I think just like any politician that starts. It's like I think they actually start out like I want to do something good, and then they get caught up in the system. And they're like, "Whoa, there's a whole bunch of cash."
And if you so let's go to the argument with the ends justify the means.
Yeah, right.
Right. If I learn how to manipulate people to give me political power or monetary, fiscal power or whatever, and I still say I'm out to do something good, is it okay for me to do that? Right. So is the outcome more important than how I got there or not? Because I think at some point when you have a lot of power, you begin to justify your own actions because you're still moving towards a goal in your mind. And whether or not you hold to that goal is a different aspect.
And this is also something, this is just native built-in human nature. As you get more power, I believe you start to get less compassionate for people.
So I have a huge viewpoint right now on Trump's meme coin and the Melania meme coin, all these things that are out there. And I just see that as either Trump or his family or people around them taking advantage of their popularity and the political divide in the country to just make a quick buck at the expense of a whole bunch of people.
Yeah, that's called marketing. Yeah,
that's called theft. That's called graft, and that's called bribery.
Hang on, is it theft? Is it stealing? It could be. I don't know if I'll go to stealing, but there's no doubt he's doing it for his interest, right?
Yeah, and I would argue I don't think it was his idea originally. I think someone came to him with the idea, and they said, okay, let's give it a try. The problem is this, right? If was it 35 investors or something like that owned Trump coin before it went public. And then when you look at the people who owned I don't know the number. I don't know where this is coming from. I heard from someone on YouTube saying that a third of those accounts that owned all this Trump coin when they went public were foreign accounts. So this is what's feeding into the bribery idea and all of that. But the concept that potentially making $1 billion a month off of this once this all settles out, right? I mean that's problematic. The whole Qatar giving America the jet. That you heard about that, right?
400 million, whatever.
Yeah, and I'm mixed on that. I'm like, it's going to the country, so that's okay. It's going to the country because of him, and so he's getting a certain benefit out of it. Okay, but it falls within my spectrum of acceptable.
Yeah, right.
Something acceptable, right? Whereas the meme coin, that to me is so wrong. You're screwing over a standard American who doesn't have access to those things, and in essence, taking money away from them because they're investing it thinking there's some value here.
But here's a question for you. Like, this is just a generic question. Mm-hmm. So let's just say that a lot of people are getting a lot of good from what Trump does or what these people do, right?
Sure.
Actually, people are getting help, and they're getting rich in the process of doing this through manipulation and deceit and all sorts of things. I mean, is that okay in some way, or is there any form of it that's okay?
So there's two layers of value that I would judge this on. One is anyone being negatively impacted directly from this? So if someone,
of course, yeah.
if someone said, "Oh, I'm going to go buy Trump coin because it's going to make money and I want to support the president," and so you go and you buy it, but you come to the game late, you're basically all the money, all the value has been stripped out of the coin.
Yeah, right.
Unless certain other things happen, which will raise the value, which is going to always be the argument that the people for it will make. So that's one idea, right? In that case, I would say, yeah, it's outright bad that, it's in essence taking advantage of people who don't understand money as well, who don't understand the market as well. And it's a form of manipulation, marketing, whatever the hell you want to call it. Okay. Yeah. That's bad. The second level is, let's assume no one's getting hurt directly by this, but there is an indirect aspect, right? So the people who are getting rich off this probably are already well connected or rich to begin with.
Yeah, right.
Right. So now you're making the rich richer, and everyone else is staying where they're at. So you're actually increasing the wealth gap. So I think this is wrong on this level too, because the wealth gap is what's causing, in my mind, all the political unrest in America today is not about politics. It's about economic disparity. Mm-hmm. And so what we've got is, the interesting thing about it is, the Republicans represent the rich and rich and poor both, which is an interesting dichotomy. And the left, or the Democrats, who used to be really kind of representing the average working man, it's got rich and then poor on both sides. There's like, where's the middle? Where are the people? Where's the real middle class in the world today, or in America today? And they're not really on either side. They're the ones who are still kind of in the middle. Yeah. And so if you allow for greater wealth discrepancy to occur, then you're hurting the country and you're hurting the people. So again, it's not good on that level. But it's not a direct impact on them through the transactions. It's an indirect impact on them through changes in economics.
And that's a different thing. That's a different sin, but not quite as bad as the first sin.
You asked me to give you a value. I just give you two value systems, two value assessments based upon what you said.
Yeah. So my thought is that the one directly says, look, I'm going to, as long as I get what I want, that's fine. And I don't have a problem with that, right? Now, if I'm going to take what I want and hurt other people in the process, I've got a little bit more of a problem with that, Assuming this thing's a zero-sum game, which I believe it is, right?
It's more of a zero-sum game than people will say, but I don't think it's a pure zero-sum game.
Yeah, no, because our economy...
I think like everything, it's somewhere in the spectrum in the middle.
Somewhere in the spectrum, yeah.
I mean, the idea of what a rising tide raises all boats, that argument, the idea of, oh yes, if all these big billionaires build companies, we'll all get jobs and make more money. Yeah. Well, there's truth to that, and as the cost of manufacturing comes down, as technology moves forward, we can get incremental changes in our life that feel like progress and getting better.
Yeah.
But if you look at the absolute wealth discrepancy between what was, the upper class and the middle class and the lower class, that is growing. And it is because wealth makes wealth. That's just the way the world works. No matter what economic system you're in, if you have wealth, you have access to more wealth in the future, to better capital markets,
Well,
right? I mean,
assuming, yeah, but you got to have a little bit of smarts too. Just because you have money doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get more
but
money.
smarts by itself will not compensate for having a billion times as much money as someone else.
Um, it's a lot
I'm not
harder.
talking about idiocy. You take an average intelligence person
Yeah,
and you give them $1 billion to start their life, or you give them $1 million to start their life, or you give them $1,000 to start their life, they will end up even further apart. It's not going to be, a thousand, a million, a billion difference. It's not going to be a thousand times difference in size. What you're talking about is they're going to end up 10,000, 100,000, a million times more wealth because they had that.
probably almost in every case. Yeah, right. Probably.
Yeah, I mean
Not,
that's
not
why in the game Monopoly, as
yeah,
soon as you get as soon as you hit get the big properties that bring in all the money,
yeah.
you're set. You just have to wait. You'll
It's just
win,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
right? Assets create more assets because you're not spending all your money just living.
yeah.
And so as that discrepancy grows between the rich and the middle class, I mean, for all its faults, unions made the middle class in America,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
right? And you basically nowadays you can't be middle class really and have a trade. Actually, you can, but we'll go into that later. Generally
Depends on
speaking,
the
you're
trade, yeah.
expected to have a college education and be in a professional job to be middle class today, which is not what it was, in the 1950s or in the 1960s. After World War II, we had a lot of openings for jobs and people did the work, and the unions made sure that people got paid. I don't want to
Reason.
say a real wage and or whatever. In many ways, it probably was too much, but they had the bargaining power, and there was a push by the government, I think, to have companies accept that and pay that out. And the companies after World War II, America was the industrial powerhouse of the world. Other countries couldn't compete with us, so we could kind of dictate prices as a country around the world. And if the union said we need to be paid more money, we just raised the prices, and the world had to accept it. But then they got industrialized, and then we were in competition.
Okay, so
And at that
here's
point, we couldn't pay more money to the unions anymore.
okay, so here's what I want to do, Chris. I don't want to talk about this ethereal stuff. I want to talk about like specifically what can you and I do and our viewers do to improve their lot in life? Like what are the skills they need to
This is going to
learn
be
or what
tough
is
for me because, again, you want to be an engineer and I want to be a theorist.
yeah, because the problem with the theorist, it doesn't pay the bills, right? Um, I want to be like practical, on the ground. What can we do? What set of principles, rules can our viewers, if they apply these principles, they'll end up better off than if they don't. Like exactly like jujitsu. Like if you know certain jujitsu techniques and you get into a fight, you're more likely to win or at least get away without being really harmed. Because you've got a certain set of techniques.
So I understand and agree we need to get to tools, which is why
Yeah.
even like the one you just mentioned about don't be a victim, right? To me, I don't like that because I don't need that tool, but some people need that tool. But I think one of the things is why is that important? And I want to know why it's important because if I understand the reason why it's important to say I'm not a victim, then I can understand other behavior that might be in the same line that's having the same impact.
Well, here's my thought, right? The reason you don't want to be a victim is because now you depend on others to give you something. It's like you're trying to get rich by demand, as opposed to not being a victim. You're saying, look, I've got to go in and change some stuff, which means I got to start a business, I got to change a job, I got to do this. I've got to intentionally put myself into a better position, a more favorable position for myself and my family. That and almost in all cases, those people will be better off in the long
So
term.
you're conflating a whole bunch of things in what you just said.
Yeah, I
Not
like that.
conflating. You're including a whole bunch of assumptions in the things you just said
Yeah, of
that
course, I like
I
to.
would want to carve apart and say,
Let's
yeah. So
break them apart
the
then.
reason you don't want to be a victim is because you don't want to be controlled by your emotions. Why? Because emotions lead to bad decisions. Okay. And what are some examples of bad decisions? And that's like thinking that the only thing you could do is yell at your boss to give you more money. You're thinking that, you're limited in the choices you have. So I get to the same, I think, overall idea you have, but I've broken it apart into pieces.
Well, that's fine. Yeah, I don't have a problem. I mean, I think that's what you got to do is break it down.
Well,
Assuming,
because once I get to that, if I believe that the reason why we don't want to be victims is we don't want to be controlled by our emotions, then the premise is don't let your emotions control you, right? And then we say, what are the tools to do that? Well, one of them is say, don't be a victim, right? Don't act like a victim. Don't think you're a victim, right? And then how can I do that? What can I do to make sure? I don't know. Some people, maybe that's their affirmations. Other people, it's more just taking a breath or, counting to 10 or whatever it is that allows you to let the emotion pass through you so that now you're like, yeah, I feel like I have no control here. I feel like a victim. But you know what? That's not true.
that's not true. Yeah. So, which makes sense then that if you get in a difficult situation, one of my old coaches said this. He goes, your first task is to try to get as many options down on a piece of paper as possible. That's your first task.
Yep.
Because right now you're feeling like you don't have any options. Now, he goes, you may not like the options. I got that. And they may be very unpleasant options, but they are options.
No, I think so. You always have an option. Sometimes that option is the option is worse than what you're facing, but you always have an option.
Yeah, I could. Yeah, I'm going to take an extreme case, which I was yelling at you last week not to do, actually. So I'm not going to do it, but I'm going to do it anyways. I mean, there probably are some cases where you've made so many bad choices up to this point that you're in such a pickle. It's like it may be possible that there are no options. You've basically jumped off the cliff 1,000, and you're falling midstream in the air. There's just no more options available to you, right? Other than just die. So I think there's it's like there's some point
There
when
was an
you
option until you were falling.
yes, until you were falling, right? But that's what I'm saying is you've made so many bad choices up to this point. The final thing before you die is you're out of options. So I guess I just want to pick that one thing out. And I want to pick it out for a very particular reason, right? A very particular reason is that you do not have an unlimited number of options. You do not have an unlimited number of get out of jail cards. You do not have an unlimited amount of time left. At some point, the clock runs out for you. And I think you need to be aware of that.
I don't know that I would say your company wants you to do a dress code and then you go into your mortality. I think you're making a stretch there.
That's not what I'm saying. You said that. I'm just saying it's.
There are times when you have no more choices where that's just the end. I'm like, yeah,
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
think that's the default thinking.
I don't know. It might be. Well, it might be that I've got a ton of time. I mean, I'm saying there's always choices, but you may not have as many choices as you think you have. So you just got to be careful of that as well too. I think there's some rule like I have no options available to me versus I have every option. If I could wait, I can always fix this later. But at some point, it's going to get you. At some point, you're going to eat such crappy food and go to the doctor so many times and tell you to lose weight and your blood pressure's high and you're this and you're that and you're that. At some point, you're going to have a heart attack, right? I mean, at some point, you're out of options. Or if you started doing something 5 years ago, now that 5 years that happened now is not going to happen, right? You're in better shape. That's all I'm saying. And it's a minor point, but I think it's important an important thing to consider. And the reason I want people to do that is I want people to start taking action. Maybe not immediately. Think through it, but don't think you got all day. Well, hang on, not all day. Don't think you have 10 years to think this through, right?
So I don't know. Do you know this British comedian Jimmy Carr?
No.
He's probably one of his humor is some of the most offensive humor you're ever going to listen to. You have to have a pretty thick skin sometimes to listen to him.
Yeah.
But he's very funny and he's very smart. If you ever hear him talk, not just in general talk. I mean, he's one of those people who just has an amazing insight into things. And he said you can summarize all self-help books in the world, everything, every thought, into 2 words:
Huh.
prioritize future.
Oh, yeah, that's.
And I actually put some thought into it. I said I actually like saying prioritize tomorrow. because that's more immediate. Prioritize, what is your tomorrow self going to say about what you did today? Do something today that your tomorrow self will thank you for, that you can write about in a gratitude journal.
Yeah.
Think about it from that aspect. And so I think maybe one of the things you need to do when you're in this mode of I am the victim of the world is coming down on me or whatever, right? The situation's bad, is like, all right, so what can I do so that tomorrow's better than right now?
Yeah, I love that. That is super
Right.
good. Assuming one scenario, assuming that there's nothing that's going to immediately kill you, right?
Yeah.
Because then
So I'm trying to avoid going into all the all of the I don't call them edge cases, but all of the scenarios that kill us. Just want to build the 80% rule, I guess.
and that's
So
fine. That's totally right. Because almost certainly, I mean, of course, I mean, you got it. Someday you're going to die, but for most of us, it's not going to be tomorrow, right? For the vast bulk of us.
yeah, I mean, there's always caveats to everything, right? But I think
Yes.
if we just start with the 80% rule, and then as we talk about the 80% rule, if we find out that there's a way to address half of the 20% that's left,
Yeah.
maybe we can turn it into the 90% rule at that point,
Yeah.
right?
Great.
But I think my thought here is, so don't what was it? Oh, don't be the victim,
Yeah.
which to me comes into don't let your emotions control you that make you feel like you're a victim.
Mm-hmm.
And we can talk about that, but and then the other idea is, prioritize tomorrow. And that doesn't mean wait till tomorrow to prioritize. I mean, prioritize what your current action, prioritize for tomorrow.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. You're
Right.
for your
So
future.
no matter how crappy things are at this exact moment, how can you tweak your action so that tomorrow's a little bit better?
Yeah. That that is a very good, solid rule that will probably help out in the vast bulk of cases. And just like you're saying, there might be some edge cases, but certainly for 90% of those cases, that's exactly the right thing to do. Yeah, I love it. Simple
Okay.
rule.
So that's one we can do then. So yeah, because I think it would be really nice to have a quick thing someone can go through, a checklist that you can actually internalize, especially if you're someone who's prone to react, to be that reactive.
Yeah, there's actually like a whole YouTube video that I think is so interesting. I just wrote that down. Um, that talked about if you've like really screwed up, if you're totally jacked up, if you're in this horrible spot, it's like these series of steps, like to F your life actually. And it's interesting. It's like some of the things were like really simple. They're like, okay, go take a shower, right? I mean, just simple stuff.
Well, it's
You know,
sensory, right? Because that's a sensory thing.
yeah.
I'm trying to
Just
find
like
where it is. I went down this path of trying to figure. So after we had our logic argument last week, I went
yeah,
into chat and was starting to define all this stuff. And one thought I says, well, what can we do to teach people to not be so reactive?
yeah.
And one of the things was they called it the 90-second rule, that your emotions are heavily biochemical,
Yes,
right?
yes.
And so you need to let them get through. So if you can wait 90 seconds, most of the chemicals will flush through and you'll be past that immediate emotion. So
If you can wait
yeah,
90
so it's not
seconds.
counting to 10. But he said, you need to realize I'm feeling something here. I'm
Yeah,
just going to count to 90 and wait,
yeah.
and then see how I feel at that point.
That's probably good advice, actually. Yeah.
Right. Another thing I talked about, which I thought was really useful, was building an emotional first aid kit.
Oh,
And this is, I think, tied to the shower idea. Find activities you do that make you feel comfortable, make you
yes.
feel good.
Yeah,
Shower, cup of tea, a jog, jumping up and down, whatever it is, something that in essence takes your mind off the immediate feeling or whatever the reaction you're having.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
It
No,
could be
that's
sensory,
exactly.
it could be auditory, sensory. It could be physical sense, auditory sense. I mean, it could be smell, right? I mean, it could be any of a number of things.
Yeah, I like that idea. So I used to use this technique, and I still do it occasionally, where if I was feeling emotional, I was feeling like distressed or something like that, I would use this exact formula, and it almost worked every single time, actually. I'd get a yellow pad,
Hmm.
and number two pencil. I'd go to a restaurant, I'd have some non-sweet iced tea, and I would sit there and I would write out what I'm feeling in like an equation, like write it down. And then I'd
Okay.
ask myself the better question now, I should have asked myself, how true is that? But before I'd asked, is this true? Because it feels true, but is it actually true? Like I write it out like a mathematical equation.
So you were saying, I feel blank
I
because
feel,
of blank?
yeah, something like that. So it'd be something like, let's say I'd get in an argument with my wife, right? And and I'm thinking, oh, she must hate me, right? Would be my thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd write out, does Shelley hate me?
Okay.
Right? I'd write it out. Like I wrote it exactly what I'm feeling.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, I don't think so. I don't think she hates me. I think she may be pissed off because there was something that I did. I made a promise that I didn't attend to. There's probably
Mm-hmm.
other thing that she's temporarily angry at me, but I don't think she hates me as a general thing. So I'm like, okay, that's cool. So then I got myself a little bit better, by doing that. And then I just went through trying to use as much logic as I could, as much logic as my emotions would allow me to start to accurately reflect what happened, right?
Mm-hmm.
What just happened? Replay the event. This is what happened. This is the way I said. This is what she said. And invariably, going through that process calmed me down and started to help me think more clearly and rationally. So that was the technique I would use.
So again, so by writing it down, you were going through the exercise of identifying the physical feeling and the emotion tied to it. Well, actually,
Um,
no. By going down into that statement, you were already past the physical feeling, right? It was strictly the emotion at that point.
oh yeah, I was like super angry or upset or in fear, something, some high level of emotional state. Definitely my emotions were outpacing my logic at that point, but I still had enough logic saying, wait a minute, I've got to pause for a second. Let me just write this down. Let me just make sure I get the facts as clear in my mind as I can right
So I'm thinking there's three layers here. The first would be if an event triggered a physical response, chemical response that made you feel a certain way. So
now.
you say something that I feel attacked by. I now feel a fight or flight kind of response. I feel weak. I feel vulnerable. I feel whatever. Right.
Yeah,
That's an actual physical feeling that comes from my interpretation of that situation.
yeah, correct.
Right.
Yeah, I'm feeling something.
After that has passed, then I've got an emotion that I've built tied to that experience. Like I can say, "Oh man, Scott must hate me. He attacked me, with this saying or whatever." Right?
I would say a story. I have a story wrapped around that in my mind
Okay,
that I.
but the story makes me feel a certain way about that, right?
Yes, of course. Yeah, this is how I
Okay,
interpret.
so
Yeah,
I've got a feeling based upon my interpretation, my story of this fact, and
and,
then
and I'm the victim, of course, right? I'm the victim. I'm the one that like deserves help in this case. It's all her fault, not mine.
that would be part of the story.
Yeah, that's part of the story. Yeah, but that's
Okay,
how I feel. The story and the feeling
and
definitely connect.
yeah, so whatever the story is, you've got a feeling about it. Now, that story could be very accurate or it could be very skewed, right? I mean, who knows what the story is? And that's, of course, that's where you've got bad facts potentially coming into your scenario. So now you sat down and you applied logic to that and you said, okay, here's what I think the world is. Is it really that way? That's where your critical thinking comes into play. And you go, let me go back to the facts that are feeding into this and see if in fact they match what I've got, or is there another interpretation, or is there other ways that I could look at these facts that come to a conclusion that no, it's not that she hates me, it's that she was angry at the moment, or something like that.
Yeah, I just you're close, but not exactly right. What I would write down is I write down what I believe is the truth based upon how I'm feeling. And I'd write that down. And then I'd say, how true is that? Or is that true?
Yeah. So, what do you mean when you say truth here?
So let's say something bad happened. I write down, Shelley hates me. That's what I'm feeling. So I'd write that down. And then I
So,
ask
and
myself,
that's it.
is
Okay.
that?
All right. But you think that's true, or does it even matter if you think it's true?
It's how I feel, right? It's what this victim part of me is saying is true, right?
Because I think the method you're going through is the same method I use to research anything. I have a thought or an idea as a premise,
Yeah,
and it's not
right.
about feelings. It's a thought or an idea as a premise, and then I start to question that premise or that
Yeah, same
idea.
thing. It's just emotionally driven. Yeah, right.
Yeah. So in this case, because you have a particular feeling, in order to you're consciously wanting to understand if this feeling is justified or not, and so you go through this process.
Yeah, justified. Maybe not justified is if it's true or not.
Why does it matter if it's true? I'm thinking if you say, "Am I justified in feeling this way?" That I can understand why you're going for it. But whether it's true or not, why does it matter if your interpretation of a situation is true or not?
I mean, we're kind of, I think, saying the same things coming from different sides. Am I justified in feeling this way? I think the same thing. I answer that question like, is this true or how true is
Or
this?
or
Because
or,
then
or,
if
or are
it's
you really
true,
saying, "Am I right?" Which is more focused on you. Am I right?
yeah, yeah, right, exactly, yeah, right. Is this true? Am I right? Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Right?
is the facts lining up with how I feel?
Because
Right.
that's more guttural. It's more about you, right? Am I right here? And
Well,
right
no,
about what?
Chris,
Even
it's
when
always
I do my logic thing, am I right in my presupposition about whatever the heck I'm going into?
Chris, it's always about me. I mean, that's just let's just start from that assumption. And
Yeah,
what
am I
I'm
right?
trying to
Well,
do,
because our own universe, right?
yeah,
We're our own little reality.
yeah, right, exactly. And so just that starting point is kind of an interesting starting point, to start from. But yeah, so these are tools I've used that have been very, very helpful.
Hmm.
Very helpful. To
That
think
makes sense to me. And I think it sounds like you just have to be aware of, well, what's the goal? And you've got to have that goal in mind. My goal is to find, am I right about how I feel?
well, the immediate goal is I don't like this feeling because it's uncomfortable, so I
Hmm.
want to get rid of this feeling, right? Because I don't want to feel this way. It's kind of like if you put your hand on a hot stove, there's not a whole lot of critical logical thinking going on. You just immediately pull back.
Hmm.
But if you didn't have that, you'd be like, okay, is this a good thing? Because I can smell my flesh burning. This could not be good for me tomorrow, right? It could impact my ability to do things. So, I mean, I would recommend that you go through that logic as quickly as possible, just because in that scenario, the longer you wait, the more damage that's being done,
I don't
right?
know that you could overcome the biological in that situation. It would be
Well,
really
no, no,
tough.
right, exactly, because it's so connected up. You're just immediately reacting. You're not thinking at all, right?
Yeah.
But in the same point, you could be not thinking about things and doing permanent damage because you're not thinking about them.
Doing permanent damage.
Yeah, because you may not feel pain, right? So you might be doing something that's causing damage that you're not aware of or you're not feeling, or there's no immediate consequence to it.
Well,
So in
so
that
I
case, it's
understand
like,
if you've got a feeling.
yeah,
Okay, so let's take a step back. You were explaining a negative feeling that you were delving into. Would you do
yeah,
the
right.
same exercise for a positive feeling?
I don't typically do that, but I probably should, yeah. Because then
I,
you
I'm
ask,
just thinking, if the value is understanding, is this feeling right?
yeah, right.
Then understanding the good as well as the bad would have value as well.
But see, ultimately, my outcome is to feel a certain way. And so logic and steps and critical thinking and actions and work will help me to lock that feeling in place, right?
Okay.
And I believe every single human being works the same way, is my hunch. That ultimately we're driven by our feelings. So feelings are important, but there's different kinds of feelings. They're like the long-term feelings, and there's these short just noise. It's like you gotta somehow get past the noise to figure out exactly what's the signal, right?
I guess the idea is we're not concentrating on the positives because we're already we're already adding value, I guess, would maybe in that sense. But what we're looking here is we're trying to eliminate the stuff that's actually taking away from what we want.
That's harming us, right? Yeah, exactly.
Harm can, yeah, I mean, the general
Hurting us, preventing us from reaching
preventing
whatever,
us. I like preventing us because preventing us, it
slowing us
means like
down, whatever you
we
want to
can't
say.
achieve our goals or desires or whatever, right? So
Yeah,
preventing us, that I like
right,
that
right,
one.
right.
Okay.
Yeah, and we're probably going to do this less when we feel good about something, because just because we feel good about it doesn't mean it's good for us, right? I mean, Tony
Hmm.
Robbins talked about different experiences, like different classes of experiences, like it feels really good, but it's bad for us. And then other experiences are, look, it feels really bad, but it's good for us. And so we're trying to figure out what's good for us and how we feel. And we're trying to balance those things.
So that's, and this is something I'm wondering is, do we need to add a dimension of judgment when we talk about how something feels? So how something feels in the moment versus how something feels over the course of a year versus how something feels over the course of our lifetime. Um, right, because in order to get the most growth, we need to have the most challenge, which includes pain and other things along the way. So I'm wondering if there's a dimension we can add to what we're feeling right now, what feels good versus what doesn't feel good, to put it into better perspective. And maybe it's the prioritize tomorrow model that we have to say. If
I
I
think
think
that's
about
reasonable.
tomorrow, if I think about tomorrow, how do I judge the pain of today?
Yeah, I think you get, how am I going to feel tomorrow? Because you gotta break pain down into different things. Like pain, is this going to cause me permanent harm, or is this a short-term pain that's not going to create any problem for me? And it could be that this pain is actually going to make me better tomorrow, right? So if I'm working out, I'm like, you know what? I'm okay with this pain because I know it's short term, and I know that I'm not causing any physical harm. In fact, I know that it's going to make me stronger tomorrow or the next day. So my mind's telling me just block that out, ignore that pain, right? That this is a pain that's okay. This is acceptable pain.
Yeah, and I like okay. A couple of weeks ago, I was having some back pain in an area
Yeah,
where I've had surgery in the past.
yeah,
And so I'm freaking out, going, "Oh crap! I'm gonna have to get surgery again." Blah 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 blah. Right. And so what I had gotten lazy on was doing my core exercises, which
okay,
would, So I sat there and I was doing core exercises, and since I hadn't done them in a little while, they were
yeah,
more painful than normal to do. Right.
yeah,
And I'm like,
right.
I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. Is going through my mind, but at the same time, I'm like, yeah, but I'm going to continue to have back pain until I do this.
Yes,
And
right.
so putting it's the logical versus the emotional kind of brain looking at this, and the logical has to overcome the emotional.
Well, I'm going to argue, because I love arguing with you, is
Yep.
that both of those things are both of those things are emotional. It's just when are they going to happen? And you're prioritizing the short term, doing your crunches or whatever you're doing, your ab work, to overcome a bigger pain later. So I'm saying I'm willing
So
to
you're
take.
adding a dimension of time to that.
Yeah, well, yeah, because we said, you added it for me when you said tomorrow, right?
Yeah, yeah,
So
no,
yeah,
no. So what I'm getting at is this comment I made about, I think we need to find out how to add another dimension of thinking so that we move towards planning, making better decisions. And I think time is the easiest one. The future is the easiest one, but there might be
oh
other
yeah,
dimensions too.
yeah, yeah. It's super critical. Yeah,
Right.
exactly. Right,
I mean,
right.
it could be about, maybe the dimension is about growth, more capability. I want to be stronger. I want to be able to handle these situations. I want to be able to sell better. I want to be able to code better, right? So and time is a factor there, but your dimension you're adding is something else. It's growth. It's some other aspect you're going for.
Yeah, 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 yeah. And it's interesting, like when you're growing, this is why it's so important to have a really good coach. And so this is like a jujitsu experience, is that there was many times when I would go to jujitsu and I would show up and my master would tell me, like, the way I felt was I felt like I sucked. Nothing was working. It's like I literally felt like I was worse off than when I came in. I just made a comment. I would just be a lot better off if I didn't even come in today. And he would ask me, why do you say that? And he's like, because I sucked at this, I sucked at this, I sucked at this, I didn't do this, I got tapped out 17 times here. And he's like, listen, I'm telling you, because I have a different perspective, right? First of all, I've trained thousands of people, like I'm a master doing this thing. It's like
Hmm.
you are getting better, this is just the price of admission to get better. And he goes, so just keep coming to class. That's all you got to think through. You come to class and just do what I tell you to do. That's it. And that's really cool when you can get that, right? When you can really get a really competent coach that can walk you through this sort of stuff. If you're trying to walk yourself through it, boy, it's a lot harder to do because you're always, hang on, not you. I'll speak in terms of I since we're doing therapy now. I always think in terms of, man, am I doing the optimal approach? Is this the right thing? Is this really going to work? It seems like it's taken 5 times as long as it should be taking.
This is why a personal trainer or a coach or any of those types of things are critical because this is I used to always think about this when I would see like an Olympic athlete with their coach,
Yeah,
and their
right.
coach never won a gold medal, but they're
Right.
coaching these gold medal athletes,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
and it goes, how's that right? He's not the expert. He never won the gold medal. How can he be a coach?
Yeah.
And it's
Right.
because it's about, first of all, it's about a different skill set,
Yeah.
but it's also about holding people accountable. It's about pulling them along to do things that they don't even realize they can do, or
Yeah.
making sure that they put in the effort where it needs to be put.
Yeah.
And so it maybe their physical capability wasn't the same as the person they're coaching,
Right.
but that doesn't mean all the other skills and abilities that went with that aren't there.
Yeah. Now, and I think you're missing one of the most important ones in that
Okay.
is perspective, because he sees things that you can't see. He can say, listen, like in a golf swing, I know, like physically, through physics, that if you want to hit the ball as far as possible, there's a certain range of motion. There's a certain, you got to move in a certain way.
Mm-hmm.
And you're not moving, you still have 10 more degrees at the top that you're not getting to. So I can see that. So if you want to hit the ball further, you've got to we got to add that. We got to figure out how to get that last 10 degrees in, right? The
Okay.
coach will see that. The athlete doing it will never see that. You just can't see
Yeah,
it because
even
it's
if the
like,
coach is not capable of doing that
yes,
themselves,
right.
right? And that's what I think that's where the distinction here is. So,
Yes, yes, because he knows the formula. He knows the math to get to the number that you want to get to. He may not be able to do it, but yeah, he knows how to get to it. And yeah, which means technically, which I don't really like the idea. I mean, you could have a fat trainer that was super effective at training people. Super effective. In fact, I think there's cases on that where trainers is really good, but now he's can barely walk around. But he used to be a star, and like he's literally got like just 20 clients that are like world gold class athletes that he trains that totally look up to him, even though he could never he can barely walk around, but he knows
well,
exactly
I
what to
mean,
do.
like, who's the UCLA basketball coach? John Wooden. I don't
John
think he
Wooden.
was a particularly great basketball player. I could be wrong. I don't think he was a particularly great, but he's considered one of the greatest coaches around, right? Because of how his approach was to getting them to perform. You know, he may not have had the ability to perform at that level, but he could get people to perform at their peak.
Because they knew all the pieces to the puzzle actually, and I know I watched one of his things. He goes, listen, I'm going to teach you how to tie your shoes, right? Because sometimes people's shoes would come untied, and he's like, listen, we got to fix this problem, so I'm going to teach you how to tie your shoes. I know you probably learned this when you were 2 years old, but we got to learn the
Well,
right way to do it, you
you got
know?
to relearn the right way, but then the other thing is you got to do it over and over and over and over and over and over and over again, so
Yeah.
that no matter what condition you're in, you can get it done.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And he understood it, and he broke down every little tiny piece and nuance in order to be successful doing this. And I think, Chris, this is what we're trying to do, right? We're trying to break down all these little tiny steps that when you put them together, and there's things that we probably people could probably never, I mean, maybe they figure it out, but things that are not obvious, right?
Well, I think if someone is able to slow down and not let the emotion or the feeling overcome their thinking, they do it once, they do it 10 times, they do it a million times. At some point, it just happens so quick, it's not even, no one else would even notice it. But
Yeah.
it takes conditioning for your body to think that way and act that way.
Yeah, it takes conditioning. It was like crazy because I know rolling around with my master. It was the craziest experience, Chris, because he had so much, like he was so aware of 3D space and where his body was in relation to my body. I mean, he was so advanced, so good at this. He would literally take like his little pinky and he'd put it in my gi, and he'd just pull with literally a tiny force, like maybe 3 or 4 ounces, just to deflect the motion of my leg, just the tiniest bit, so I couldn't get my foot where I wanted it to be. I mean, he knew this stuff like 20 steps ahead, and you're just like, what? And you're just like, what are you doing? What? It's like, nothing works with you. He's like, yeah, nothing works because I'm not letting you work because you know I know where your foot needs to be, so I'm going to prevent it. Instead of stopping it last second, I'm going to keep your foot just a mile away. I'm not even going to let it even get close to that. And he understood things so well and had such physical awareness. I mean, he could literally be teaching class, talking on the phone with his eyes closed, and he knew exactly what my body was doing and where his body was. He had so much like awareness of what was going on. Freaking awesome.
How do you describe that capability?
I can't. I don't even know the
Is there a
word.
word for it?
I guess awareness. You have to be aware, right? I'm not
But does awareness cover the working knowledge? Does the experience, the everything else that's encapsulated in what you just said?
I guess he just did it a bunch of times. He just was genetically predisposed. That was his thing. And he had an extraordinarily good teacher. And he spent a lot of time doing it. So probably all those things together, you know.
So I'm trying to think of like it's not quite perfect, but I would maybe use the word wisdom.
Yeah, wisdom. Yeah, that's so funny. That was my word that came out from Jabar's thing today. I don't know. That was
Yeah,
my
yeah. That was interesting. You know what mine was?
no
Competence.
competence. Oh, that's interesting, actually.
So yeah. So the one word that stuck out, was competence. I had a hard time getting down to it too. The 5 was easy, the 3 was easy. 5 values, 3 values, but getting down to one value. I'm looking at this and I'm going, how do I judge people who I view as incompetent? And I really have a negative view of incompetence.
And it's interesting. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's fascinating. So I don't know how to get to that, but I'm going to give you one more example that maybe will help you. Maybe, I don't know. So if you have somebody that's much better than you teaching you, he can directly teach you something. But at the same time, like so in shooting, like there was this F class thing. We'd be on the ground shooting at the target 300 yards away. And so I had one of the best shooters right next to me. And I asked him, could you just speak out loud? Just talk out loud. Just think out loud to me. And it's so interesting and it was so insightful because what he was talking about, oh, feel that wind coming up? It's coming left to right. Oh, it slowed down a little bit. Yeah, just little things like that.
Well, that's
Oh,
awareness too. I mean,
that's
you
awareness.
because you felt the exact same thing, you just weren't aware of it.
I didn't feel it, but now I could feel it when he
Well, your
mentioned it.
body felt it, but you didn't. Your
Yeah,
mind didn't recognize it, so there was
yeah,
no awareness of the
I think
situation.
so. I think so.
Right?
He would talk about
Because awareness isn't about your body's experiencing whatever's going on in the world. The question is, what does your mind understand about what's going on?
are you aware of it? Yeah. Yeah. And that's a big
Right?
part of jujitsu is like literally your body was learning this stuff.
We talk about being in the present, and I think a big part of being in the present is being aware.
Awareness is
Right?
super
So
critical.
why is meditation? Oh, because I'm in the present and blah blah blah, and nothing else is getting in the way, and all these other thoughts that are in my head aren't getting in the way. But really, when you say you're in the present, that means you're just aware. And I mean, not just, but I mean, it really means awareness of what's going on right now.
I think so, because I think what that means is to me, it means that I've turned the noise down in my head to a low enough level where I can start to see the signal in other stuff. I mean, he would talk about little things like crazy stuff. It's like, oh, I'm feeling my left shoulder's a little bit tense. Let's just make sure I relax. I mean, these are the things he was speaking. And I'm like,
Well,
oh my
it's
God,
like
he's,
when you go to the doctor and he's asking you to describe, the sensations in your body or whatever you're feeling. It's like, and you wake up and your left knee is a little sore, and then you forget to tell him because you just got used to it.
yeah, right.
Right. I mean, no, you need to be aware. Oh no, there's this thing here. There's this sensation in my body.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah,
It's
that's fascinating. And so this is this is why I think meditation is just calming your mind down long enough to be aware of, like, we can actually hear, like, what's going on, you know?
But I guess if you wanted to try to explain it, why would your body get used to pain? Because it needs to move forward. It needs to keep going. It needs to survive. And unless you can fix that pain, there's no usage of worrying about it.
Yeah, your brain turns it off at some point. Yeah, like
Yeah.
somebody sleeping are next to a what do you call it? Like a train track where a train goes by all the time. They don't even freaking hear the train anymore. It's like,
You
do they
reset
hear?
your threshold, and unless it breaks the threshold, your body just. But if you're really aware, you go, "Oh, my body's experiencing this."
Yeah, right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. There's a cool thing. God, I'm so jealous. I kind of wish I lived back in California because there's so many great resources there to go to. But there was yoga, and there's this one kind of yoga. I can't remember what it's called. Cried. But it's basically sort of like a body scan where you lay there for like 45 minutes. Um, I'll think of the name. I can't think
It's
of
a
it.
yoga.
Yeah, it's a form of yoga. Yeah, it's a kind of yoga. There's a bunch of different kinds of yoga, but
Yeah,
it
no,
was,
I just
and even what's his name talked about it. Who's the eye guy? Oh boy, come on, Chris, help me out. My
the
brain.
eye guy.
The guy with Andrew Huberman talked about it. Um,
He's the eye guy. Okay.
yeah, no, that's his thing. That's his like specialty, right? Is his eyes or something like that. I don't think he ever talks about it, but I think that's his like something to do with the eyes or whatever. We should look that up and see. But he talked about this kind of yoga that was so insightful because it lets you do a body scan, so it lets you actually feel and
Yoga
relax.
nidra.
That's it. Yoga Nidra. That's it. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know
Such
anything about it.
you should know about it because it's a tool that allows you to become more aware. And you go to
Okay.
a few yoga nidra classes, and all of a sudden, it's like you're aware of more
Well,
stuff than before.
I mean, when you're lying down and right before you do corpse pose and whatever the traditional yoga is, right? And you're supposed
Yeah.
to you actually tighten one muscle,
Yeah. Right.
right? Yeah. Tighten one finger muscle, tighten the left foot. You just tighten one muscle at a time. First of
Yeah.
all, that's much harder to do than you think unless you've done it, right?
Yeah.
Because you
Right.
tend to tighten groups of muscles,
Yeah. Right.
and then you get into that total relaxation after you've kind of burnt the energy and stressed your muscles.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then I fall asleep and wake up after the after yoga's over.
Yeah. 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 And it's very similar to yoga nidra, except it's instead of being 2 to 3 minutes, it's more like 45 minutes, but it's the same kind of concept. And it's like her voice like walks you through and guides you through like every single thing. So that's awesome. Yeah, so I think these are tools that you can use to help
Well,
become a little more aware.
so I did I was telling you I was looking to figure out how you can build I actually called it a personal resilience system,
Uh-huh.
right? So and I told you the 90-second rule, the idea that the chemistry goes through your body in 90 seconds. So if you can wait 90 seconds before you act,
Yeah,
then you won't be reacting to the body, your chemicals in your body, right?
yeah,
Um, Cognitive reframing, which you've kind of talked about, is you need to think about it from a different viewpoint, a different
yeah, right,
mindset, right?
right.
You need to, so maybe that's asking yourself, is there a logical reason this person acted this way? Is
Yeah,
there something that aside, and that gets you immediately out of they're attacking me into like, why would they say this? You might end up like they're attacking me. I mean, that might be the logical result is, yeah, they are in fact attacking you. Or insulting you. But
yeah.
quite often we take insult when none is meant, right? We get
Well,
offended when the offense is not meant.
yes. See, I want to talk about that particular point. That's so amazing because if you don't have those skills, that maybe the other person just having a bad day, if you haven't done negotiation training to label what their emotion is, oh, hey, Chris, it seems like you're kind of angry today. Like, what's going on, right? Um, then I'm thinking we're in a fight, right? Because I've got that other set of tools. But if I have that set of tools and I've got jujitsu and I've got a bunch of different tools, I'm like, oh, if you really want to hit me, I'm like, okay, now I got to start using my jujitsu tools. But I know what to do. There's nothing shocking that's happening.
I'm thinking we need to get comfortable confronting it right away. Right. So the that one guy I mentioned who's the lawyer who teaches you how to communicate. His thing is when someone says something insulting to you,
Yeah,
you go back and you say, did you mean to be insulting? Or did you say, can you repeat that, or
Yeah.
whatever. You basically throw it back at them. And if they said it the same way and, maybe they don't realize it's insulting, that's one potential idea. But
Yeah.
if you call it out immediately, there's a chance to diffuse it before you internalize it and get angry.
Yeah, but that's self-control, right? Because
Yeah.
somebody else should not make you angry.
No, but
And you're
it's a default. It's like, I feel this way. Before I react, let me just double check that that's what they want, how they want me to react. Right?
Yes, that's
And you said,
exactly.
did you mean to be insulting? Yes, I did. Okay, now I'm justified to react in any way I choose.
Yeah, well, hang on. I'm not going to give you any way you choose at this point,
Oh,
but
anyway, I choose. That doesn't mean I can. It doesn't mean I can. I said react. It doesn't mean I take action to hurt someone, but
yeah,
react.
no, that's fair enough. But that's basically if you have in any argument, you ask clarifying questions like, okay, like what you're saying is this then. It's the same concept, right? Are you really
It's the whole
saying
idea of straw manning someone, or no, sorry, steel manning someone. Is that you say, "This is what I heard.
this is
This
what
is
I
my understanding of what you mean," right?
yeah,
But in this case, when you think they're trying to be offensive, you just call them out and say, "Hey, were you trying to be offensive?" Or how am I supposed to feel after you say that? Or, what was the expectation about when you said that? How did you want me to hear that?
yeah, and they depending on what they say, they might say that, listen, I'm going to take my right hand, I'm going to beat you to a bloody pulp in the next 3 seconds. You're like, oh, okay, we've moved to another area of negotiation, right? So now I need another set of skills.
No, but I mean, it's like you say something and I get offended. I go, Scott, did you mean to be offensive, or did you want to piss me off, or
Yeah,
And if you say yes, then okay, that's a different set of choices that I have if you say yes versus if you say no.
yeah. No, exactly right. But boy, oh boy, having these tools
So
is,
I
is
think that cognitive reframing. I mean, we probably need to come up with a couple of generic questions that pull you in. So mine is always, is there a logical explanation for this? Can I build that's usually the way it was. Can I build the logical explanation for how this action occurred?
I would say almost in every case. Yeah,
Yeah.
almost in
Well,
every case.
I think, yeah, I usually can. I mean, the whole idea of me arguing the thing earlier with the Starbucks employees was trying to say, okay, I'm going to try to build a logical argument to defend what they're saying.
Yeah, right.
Right.
Yeah.
And it wasn't the best of arguments, but it did have a logical flow in my mind.
Yeah. Well, hey, you know what they're going to do though? Starbucks is going to give them 2 free shirts, actually, apparently. So, luck.
So maybe they should have offered him 3.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah,
I mean,
but that's what it
personally,
is. Yeah.
but again, it's all in whoever wants to be offended or whoever wants to build a victimhood of people who feel offended. They can easily do it through spinning the message, through communication, through marketing, in essence, right? I'm going to
Yeah.
take what they say and I'm going to package it in a way that will get the result I want from this audience over here.
Yeah. But I think that in my mind, the first most important thing you've got to ask, right? Before you do anything else, and it needs to be super quick, is how much time do I have before something really bad would happen to me? You know? Like if some guys, for instance, here's my thing. If some guy's foaming at the mouth with a hammer coming at you, swinging the hammer around, you shouldn't be asking him, how's your day going? And let me make sure I understand what your intention is here. Right? I mean, because you don't have enough time. You need to be reacting.
I don't think that's a judgment of time, though. I think it's a judgment of the situation. Some things are more immediate, some things are more urgent, some things are less urgent,
Well, that's
right?
time, right? I mean, how much time do you have?
But that's situational. That's not about what steps you should take. It's like,
Oh,
you
yeah,
take the
right.
right. I mean, if it, right, you make a judgment on the immediacy of the thing you're saying. Usually, in a conversation or an argument, you're going for an immediate response because you feel the need to respond within a certain period of time.
Yeah, but I guess here's my point, though, actually. Based on how much time you have, is going to limit the options that you have.
Sure,
So you
but
need to just be aware of like how much time do I have to work this problem? What are my constraints, right? Basically.
something doesn't feel right about that. And I think the reason is because I think the situation dictates the time. It's not about you saying how much time do I have. It's the situation dictates the time.
Yeah, but you got to be aware of that, though. I hang on. I think okay.
Well,
Here's what.
so I've got an assumption that you understand the situation. That's my assumption is, if I'm responding to a situation, I need to understand the situation I'm responding to.
I'm not sure though, because a lot of times people put bad inputs. They'll do a response that's not an optimal response.
Well, yeah, that's a different judgment call, right? I mean, the quality of someone's response is because they don't have the right tools, they don't have the right information, they don't have the right whatever,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And you're saying it's an inappropriate response or a not suboptimal response because of time? Is that what you're saying?
No, no, no. I'm saying depending on how much time I have to respond is going to indicate what I'm going to do or how much time to think through this, right?
Yes, I default to taking more time if there's a way for me to take more time because I want to think it through more. Other
Almost
people may not.
that's a generally good thing. That's a very jujitsu principle. Like if somebody's coming at you and you're feeling like they're gonna tap you, the first thing is how can I slow things down? Right? I gotta slow it down because I'm feeling overwhelmed, I can't breathe. I'm like, I need some time to think, right? I need to give myself a little bit of time to think.
But given your other comment about what if you're in a situation that's immediately dangerous,
Yeah, still though,
I'm not going to spend a lot of time judging my options. I'm going to have an immediate set of options and take one of them, even if they're not the optimal thing may have been something that I couldn't even think of at the time.
no, that's true, but you still are evaluating options. Is what I'm saying is you
Yeah.
still
Well,
have
fight or
options.
flight is an option, right?
Yeah, right. And just try to get as many of those. But I mean, you got to compress it. You got to do this very quickly, right? And in many cases, you've got to pre-drill this stuff because you can't think up jujitsu like on the spot. Oh, I should have went to jujitsu, right? Well, it's too late, right? You can't go to jujitsu now.
You know, so this goes back to the wooden conversation, of practicing something that's simple over and over again to what's not even simple. It's ingrained. It's natural,
It's
right?
yeah, it's ingrained,
Right.
right? Which
So
which which is awesome because whenever you're under sort of pressure, I don't know about you, but I know for me, it seems like time slows down. It seems like if I've gotten in an accident before or something like that, I know I'm Emily going to be there. It seems like in my mind, it's like, oh my God, everything goes in slow motion. It's like I can see things happening, but it's like taking a long time to happen.
is it in real time or are you reliving it in your mind in slow motion? Because what I find is like an accident will occur, it's quick or whatever, but as I replayed in my mind was able to take in much more and record much more information so that when I think it through, it feels much slower because I observed so much more because of the as soon as you understand the accident's going to happen, and there's usually a split second where you understand it's going to happen, then the mind goes into high gear and starts recording everything in high definition so that when I'm able to think back, I can see a lot more than I would if it was just a normal day.
Well, this what I'm talking about is not afterwards. This is happening while the event's happening, before the collision happens. Oh, I see it's coming. There it is. Okay, what am I going to do? I literally feel like I hit the slow
Well,
motion
I
button
think
on.
you're short circuiting the what am I going to do because you've conditioned your body to understand the needs to do things, and it just triggers the reaction so that the conscious thought is less than you would think. So, you know, the John Wooden example was, doing free throws, right? And someone who's able to do 70% free throws from the free throw line, he goes, well, yeah, I can always make this percentage or whatever. And he goes, well, he wanted you to get to perfection because if they're if when the crowd is there booing you, when something else happens, when there's things that pull your attention away, do you still have the default skill set to be able to
Yeah,
perform at the same level?
right. You can ignore the noise. Yeah,
Right?
exactly.
It's like when you drive the same pathway to work every day for years, you don't think about the driving anymore.
Yeah, that's a different thing. This in this particular case, I'm talking about something different than that, Chris. I'm talking about my perceived time slows way down. like 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 it's happening in slow motion to me in my
But
mind.
for that to happen, I think your ability to trigger action needs to be require less thought. I think thought happens at the speed of thought. What I'm saying is for you to know, okay, this is going to happen. This is, your mind's reacting to all these things because you've basically conditioned it to bypass the need to think in many ways.
Well, okay, let me break this down. So I'm asking you, have you had that experience? I'm asking you to explain why. I'm just asking you, do you have you had that experience before?
Not the way you're describing it. That's why I use the after the fact.
Okay.
Is like normally I cannot recall 1 second of my life in vivid detail. But during an accident, I can recall in vivid detail that 1 second of my life. And so what I'm wondering is, are you conflating that ability for your mind to pick up all that information in that short period of time and then be able to play through it because it recorded it all? Or are you actually experiencing it at a different pace? That's where I'm saying, is it in fact that you're doing it at a different pace, or is it the fact that your mind just goes into overdrive and is able to pick up so much more information?
See, I don't know.
That's
I'm just asking you. Yeah, I don't know how or why. I'm just so the answer to you is no, you haven't had that experience before.
not the way you're describing it now.
Yeah, not the way I'm describing it. Yeah. So I'm just looking on the internet. So it says like time slows down during accidents. So it says, so it is a common thing. The proposed theory is that the experiences of time slowing down are related to the increased speed of internal processes.
See,
When we,
that's exactly what I'm saying. So you're not
well,
slowing down. Your
oh,
body is recording everything that's happening much faster. But I don't think you're actually experiencing anything any faster. Your body's just doing more things.
but this is not after the fact. This is still before the like event's going to happen or something like that.
As soon as your mind triggers that you're in an important event, it records in high definition.
Yeah, I think so. But it's before the thing happens. I'm experiencing.
It processes in high definition, I guess maybe is the better way to go.
Yeah, and you
It hits
since you
turbo.
haven't had like if you hadn't had an experience, you may not be able to understand. So maybe talk to other people to see if they've had, but like literally, so this is, let me describe something, right? So you're like, it could be like an accident happening. And literally, the collision is going to be less than 1 second. And for
Hmm.
me, it seems like it's going to be 30, like the actual time in my mind, it takes 30 seconds. And I notice things. I'm like, oh my gosh, that person is going to hit me. And I can see she's wearing a red shirt. Like, and she's like on her phone and her kid's screaming and she's like turned away, so that's probably doesn't see me actually. I'm looking outside, I see the wind blowing, I see the trees. It's like all these things I'm like noticing this like before boom happens.
Yeah, but so my argument here is that you're not experiencing time differently. Your body is doing 3 times as much stuff as it does during a normal second. So
Yeah. However it's working, I don't know, but it feels like time slowed down, right? But I
so
don't think time
your body is capable of doing 15 transactions a second. Normally you only do 5. You see the accident coming and your body says, boom, 15 transactions a second, go.
Yeah, I think that's what's happening. So it says right here in this thing, related to the increased speed of internal processes. Yeah. Yeah. And the effect of that, from my perspective, it feels like time slows down. But it's not, but it's just a perception. So this is a common thing. Okay.
Yeah, but for it to happen, or I think part of it, what happens is, yes, your body kicks into overdrive, but if you've got preconditioned activities for situations that you've already drilled into your body, you can even do more things because it's less thought required, less actual processing power required because your body just goes boom, it does this, it does that, it does this. Like if you've got the reflexes of a race car driver, maybe you can avoid the accident because your body just knows how to do that.
Yeah. This is interesting. So I think, though, I think what I'm trying to get to, I don't know what I'm trying to get to, but I think what I'm trying to get to is that there's an increase of awareness. It's like there's not a lot of the mind chatter going on. It's like I'm 100% focused on this thing, and now it seems like things are happening slower. And so maybe that's a
Well,
key.
you're prioritizing that moment, and all the
Yes,
resources of your mind go into that moment. So that's why you're able to do more processing, right?
yeah. I
And you
think,
can't maintain that for minutes at a time because it would just drain your ability to process to do things.
which is interesting. I mean, I wonder how long we could. I mean, is it possible if we're
Do you
not?
need to be in a constant state of being afraid you're having an accident?
No, I'm not saying that, but I don't know what I'm saying. I'm just thinking out loud right now because I'm thinking this could be a principle that could be helpful because I know I've heard like the older you get, right? People, I commonly hear this all the time. is that, oh, it just seems like time is going by so much faster. It's like, it seems like the older you get, time's running by. It's like, oh my gosh, I
So
can't believe it's like Christmas again. It seems like it was Christmas.
meditation might be the way to do that, because if you stay aware and in the moment, you're not letting things distract your mind, so you're able to stay in the moment more,
I
right?
think
So
that's what it might be.
meditation, you're not having social media feed into and distract you. You're not having TV. You're not having podcasts. You're not having radio. You're not having spouses and family members. You're not having your pets come up and annoy you, right? When you're truly meditating in that state, you are in the moment, which means that your mind can ignore all that stuff around you and just concentrate in the moment.
Yeah, and I think this might be connected in some way to flow state as well too. Which, oh,
Hmm.
that's kind of a funny looking thing.
So I think flow state is actually a mix of meditation and focus. You're focusing on a particular task or that you need to get done, and you go into a meditative state where all the attention is on that task.
Yes. And it seems like when people are in that, it's like it's a very pleasurable place to be, like a runner's high or this or that.
Well, because
It's
I
it's
think you're getting the sense of accomplishment, the sense of motion, the sense of progress, along with the work you're doing, right? Otherwise, I mean, doom scrolling through YouTube is fun, and it gives you an immediate gratification second by second as you watch these little videos. But you're not getting a long-term gratification.
no,
In
no.
fact,
In
at the
fact,
end, you feel shamed that you spent an hour scrolling through crap.
yeah, yeah, no, exactly right. Have you ever eaten potato chips before? I'm sure the answer is
Oh, of
yes, of
course.
course, right?
Yes.
At least a
Not
couple.
not 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 in the last month or two, but yes.
But so, anyways, so you get a big bag of potato chips, right? And it's like the first couple taste super good, and you do have this like doom scrolling thing where you're like, I don't even know why I'm eating this. I'm full. I know it's not good for me, but I feel compelled. It's like this external force is like driving me to
Well,
to eat this.
not only that, it's also like when you're if you consider this while you're doom scrolling, it's just another one. It's just a few more seconds,
Yeah, yeah.
right? And then it's an hour later,
And it's an hour later, and you're like,
right?
how did what just happened, right? So, anyways, Chris, I don't know where I want to go with this, but I want to get into this state, and somehow we got to figure it out. I want to figure it out how we can get more into flow state, which helps us be more creative, less victim, more intentional. I mean, I
Okay,
think it leads to generally a good outcome.
so we've moved away from this breaking your emotional response kind of apply your critical thinking to a different thing we're working on now, which is getting into the ideal state to get stuff done.
I
I
think
just want to
so.
clarify because I'm still trying to think of other tools we can use to break the cycle of letting your emotions control you.
Well, I don't think we need to stop that because I think that's super important. But yeah, I feel like I'm just sort of drifting over in this general
Okay.
direction that we were talking about it because yeah, and I don't know if you want to move or not. I feel like
No, I was
moving.
thinking, one of the problems people get into is you get into this not doom scrolling, but kind of doom cycle in your head. You think, oh, this happens, and then that happened to me, and then this other thing happened to me, and and suddenly you're in this all negative kind of um, the term was rumination, right? You're thinking and thinking, and all the thoughts are going down this bad path.
Yes, yeah,
This could happen in the middle of the night when you're trying to go to sleep, and your mind
yeah,
won't let go of something.
yeah,
That sort of, and it doesn't always have to be. It's generally a negative impact on you, but it doesn't always have to be a negative thought. Your brain could just be going down the pathway of trying to figure stuff out. But being able to recognize that and break that and say, go out and, do 5 minutes of exercise or go or get up and go to the bathroom or whatever it needs to be to break that thought cycle,
yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
So I think that's one of those things. And the other thing people often forget, and this is one when you're talking about, they're out to get me kind of a viewpoint, right? Is like, it's the spotlight effect. You think you're the center of someone else's universe. And in essence, you're only the center of your own.
Yeah, it's really, dude, nobody
Right.
cares, right?
Just think someone is going go, is nefarious and going after you and trying to say all the, they want to insult you and they're trying to destroy your career and all. You realize how much effort it takes to do that, and the fact that they don't want to waste their time trying to destroy you in most cases. I mean, there are some vindictive people out there that probably do,
There's no doubt that happens sometimes, but that's a fringe
but
case.
but
Yeah,
generally you can default to the idea that there's nothing meant by this. There's nothing personal, and just I'm interpreting it as personal is all.
yeah. which is really kind of interesting, which means I want to come back because I'd like to wrap it up in a couple of minutes, Chris, that you're okay with
Hmm.
that. Um, Even if you're not okay, I still want to wrap it up. But anyways, it's like maybe then this is the antidote to the Starbucks victim 2-year-old throwing a temper tantrum. Is that
That's your
they're
bias there, but okay.
is like, of course, it's my bias. Yeah, exactly. I just want to. I'm going down here. Is that they're thinking this thing that really the way that they're feeling is an error in thinking. It's an error in thinking.
They think it's about themselves. That's the spotlight effect. And the corporation probably isn't even thinking about them, but something else.
Yeah, they're like, dude, I just don't want to get sued because
Yeah.
people are wearing these things. They have a hook on their thing. We've had 22 cases of somebody pulling hot coffee on them, spilling on a customer. We're just trying to avoid that, right? We're not trying to
Yeah.
take your creative freedom away.
So that would be the spotlight effect saying, I think this policy is against us. They want to control us. And it's like, that's a total misread on the situation.
Total misread, actually. Yeah. That's in the, you know what we got to do, Chris? We got to get Andrew back on. Because my
Yeah.
hunch is he's probably got some actual really cool tools to use in these cases, you know?
Yeah. I think so. I think yeah, knowing that you're likely not the center of attention for someone else is not the same as logically being able to derive that, right? If your reaction is, oh man, they're out to get me, you got to get through that. How do you get through that?
You got to really break down and you have to ask yourself, like I was trying to do with my yellow pad, how true is this? Are they
Mhm.
really out to, I know it feels like that, but are they really out to get me?
And that goes to my default thinking is there another explanation for this? Is there a more logical reason than that, right?
There's no
Because
doubt there's
what's
reason.
is it not Occam's razor? It's Hanlon's razor. I forgot which one. When you've got a whole bunch of options, the one that's most likely is probably the true one,
Yeah,
right? The
yeah.
one that's mostly. And so if I go through and I come up with 5 scenarios why this could happen, I'm going to default to the one that I think is most likely. Now I could be wrong. That doesn't mean I'm right,
No,
but
no, but
you know,
it's the starting
yeah.
point, yeah.
But the more I know, the more right I'll be, or the more chance of being right I'll be.
Well, and it's so interesting because I've had people that I've talked to before. Like I was doing the victim thing and I kind of was bitching at him. And one comment one guy made was so fascinating. He said, listen, if I was really out to get you, you'd know, right? You wouldn't be thinking about it. I'm like, oh, okay, at least that's honest answer, you know?
It's probably a fair way to think of anything. You're going to know, you know. Um, I mean, the truly nefarious, horrible people who are trying to hurt you, maybe they're going to probably be good at hiding, though. You know. But the number of them that are out there, I don't know. You know, the world can be a dangerous place, but not as much as the media makes us feel it is.
No, and it's way safer than I think it's ever been, you know, assuming that you live in a halfway decent neighborhood. I mean, you know.
Safer depends. You know, your life is probably safer, but if you feel like your rights to express yourself are harm against you, when I mean, there's different ideas of harm today, right? Harm
Yeah.
used to be violence and damaging to you physically. Now we believe harm can be emotional and harm can be intellectual and all these other things that we didn't have before.
Yeah, like if you're gonna melt down because somebody tells you that you can't wear your favorite shirt to work anymore, I mean, there's bigger stuff to worry about, I think, you know.
But is there? I mean, that's an argument I can make for you right now that is the important thing we should be concentrating on. If you wanted to have that argument, I could do that too. So
I would
it's
say that invariably there's bigger stuff to worry about than this.
so I guess where I would come down on that is let's say I make an argument that no, this is the thing to worry about. I would go down the path of arguing that in my mind. Then I go down the path that you're going down of no, there's bigger stuff to worry about, and then I
Yeah.
would assign a value, a likelihood value, right, and
Yeah.
say it's probably true that it's less important this argument than this argument, and then I'd say okay, so I skew this way. This is where I think right now.
Yeah, right, right,
Right.
right.
But by going down that logical path of defending both sides, I now have a better understanding of the situation. So tomorrow I find out that there's a leaked memo from Starbucks that says, haha, we're gonna control our employees and make them do whatever we want. I go, oh, so that scenario was much more realistic, and suddenly that becomes the thing. But I've thought it through at that point, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I mean it's not that it can't happen, it's just that what's the likelihood? Everything's a probability in life.
Everything's a probability. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Except death. I mean, everybody dies someday.
And well, we got people trying to fix that too. So.
Yeah. Well, you can try. Yeah, exactly. But
But
all right.
anyway,
Well,
so
that's
I think what you should do is also then go over some of these the other tools that chat came up with that I think are really good. Another one's like third person self talk. If you're getting emotional, start talking about yourself in the third person to
yeah.
remove the emotional tie.
It removes the emotion. Yeah.
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 Chris
Yeah.
isn't feeling very good right now. Chris is
Yeah.
really pissed off, you know, and
Yeah.
that actually will remove you from the immediate feeling.
Yeah. Which is a very good technique, actually.
Yeah. So I think,
Yeah.
yeah, these are all things that we should, I guess, actually write down.
Yeah. Well, I've been writing them down, actually. I've got like a little list of them or whatever. So we should probably produce a little document or something. And listen, it's not, here's the thing, Chris. Here's what I want to do, right? Because the problem is if we wait till it's perfect, we'll never get written. So we just get something down, knowing that it's going to change, guaranteed 100% it's going to change. But at least, remember that first podcast? We didn't know we were going to do it. We should just, but Chris, let's just hit the record button, right? Just hit the record button. We just got
Well,
to get something
so
down.
I think we need to talk about how we're gonna put this together, just so we have a deliverable of some sort to put out there.
Okay. All right.
Does using the word deliverable offend people?
I don't
It
know.
sounds so corporate to me. We need deliverables for this podcast, Scott.
Um, yeah, we need to give something tangible maybe to people
Yeah,
actually in order to help them. So yeah, and help ourselves. It's like, and you got to make it clear, like I'm not some noble guy. I'm trying to help myself first and foremost. Let me just be clear to everybody. And then I think, but these are cool things. I think these could actually help other people as well too.
I view it. We all have primary drivers and secondary drivers and the like. And to me, helping everyone build better skills to get through life is a secondary driver. It's not my primary driver.
Yeah, right. Yeah, yeah. For me, I want to learn these skills, right? So I get reasonably good at them.
I want to understand how the universe works. That's all.
That's all. Simple.
And of
Well,
course, that might put me in competition to God, and that's not necessarily a good place to be, right? So,
well, I don't think you're in competition. I think you're just trying to understand God, right? I mean, ultimately, one of my core things is that one of these days I'm going to start my own YouTube channel. I'm going to call it Build with Big Scott, and we're going to build stuff. And it's like, so I consider like my role. You know those guys that flip the signs around, on the street corners?
oh yeah, huh? Mhm.
Like, oh, come get our mattress. That's what my job is supposed to be. My job is, hey, look at all this cool stuff. We can talk about physics, logic, but it's all God doing this. It's like I'm a pointer. I just point. I'm like, go over there. Like the person at Costco, even,
There's
that's my
so
job.
much stuff to experience in the world, and today it's even worse than normal because of social media and everything else. And you got to find someone who aligns with how you want to think,
Yeah.
and then you can follow them, and they can help filter through some of this stuff for you.
Yeah. Yeah. That's my job. It's like I'm supposed to have some wisdom. I'm supposed to be a teacher. I view myself as the guy at Costco giving out free samples, saying, hey, Chris, if you like, this, whatever, wonton fried duck one that I just made for you, there's a whole bag of them over there, if you like it. That's my job. I'm just a
Your
pointer.
job is to be the guy at Costco. Okay.
Well, the guy at Costco, the guy flipping the sign around, I'm a pointer. Hey, look over there, right?
So
Like,
I envision my job as the guy standing there watching you prep, and then commenting to the other person who's going to come up and try the sample and say, "Hey, don't try this anytime." You know, that's my
well,
role.
that's okay. Okay. And my job is, that he may be right, but I'm just try it. Just try it. Who knows? Some people like him, some people don't, but just try it. And
Yeah,
I'll just say he's just a
I'll,
crank.
I'll
He's
just comment and say as you're biting into it, it's got MSG.
MSG in it. Yeah, but hey, MSG helps the flavor. MSG is like, I think, aren't they bringing that back now? MSG?
Well, MSG never went away. They just rebranded it and renamed it.
It just like gives you headaches and just
There's
causes.
so much. There's so much MSG in food that it's just. I think it's got 5 or 6 different chemical names now. And there are people who will say no MSG and they'll go out of their way to say it. And people do get headaches and other reactions. And I
Yeah,
do think probably having too much of it's not good for you. But then having too much
yeah,
salt is not good for you either. So
yeah. I don't know. Now there's no element. Oh, let me pitch element, right? So I got some
the,
element.
the
Um,
drink, yeah. Mhm.
yep, they come in little packets. Apparently, you're too much of a cheap ass to actually buy it. You
I
make your
make
own.
my own element. They give you the recipe online.
You make your own element or whatever. But I wanna pitch the chocolate salt one. So it's designed to be made hot. and you put it in. And I've got a little kettle now, which you turned me on to Amazon. That thing is awesome, Chris. It's like $60. You literally just set the temperature you want the water, pour in some water, hit the go button, and literally like in a minute or 2 minutes, it beeps and it's done. You pour it in there, you mix it up. It's amazing. It's an amazing thing actually. And then I drink this stuff, and it's like it tastes really good. Number one, and number two is it really fixes my hunger cravings. It's just I don't know if that's the salt, if it's the chocolate. I don't know, but it's pretty darn good, you know. So
No, I think it's a good, could be the salt, and it could just be the fact that you're drinking something. You're putting something in your stomach. I don't know.
well, but I drink this. I drink like a whole thing of water. It doesn't do the same thing as just a little cup and a half of chocolate water. I don't know. Maybe my mind is saying, oh, this should
It
have a
doesn't
bunch of
have.
calories and taste good. I don't.
Is it tea that has polyphenols or whatever in it? Because some of those things are supposed to help you with hunger too, right?
Green tea, yeah, green tea, yeah.
Yeah. I
And I
mean, I'm just
started
drinking
that.
my blue water with a little bit of apple cider vinegar in it. So I like
Interesting.
these weird shaped bottles, by the way. To me, if I'm going to carry a water bottle, now my wife doesn't like it because I got a flask as a water bottle.
Oh yeah,
Right, this is
people
my
get
flask
crazy.
as a water bottle. But
Yeah.
if someone sees me drinking out of this, they're assuming something else. So
Yep. 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 And probably rightfully so, actually. Rightfully so.
what? I don't drink that much. I drink like
You know,
once a month if I'm at most. So
oh, okay. Well, good for you. Um.
yeah.
Okay, Chris. With that,
With that, we are done. Enjoy. Have a good weekend and go barbecue.
all right. Sounds good, Chris. We'll see you. Bye.
All righty.